Okay.
At first, it seemed like deciding on a prog metal album to look at for Metal Month might be tricky. After all, this is an area in which Eric has very deep knowledge and experience. In fact, Eric appears on a really good prog metal album released this year, A World to Know by Sunrise Dreamer. So we discussed Dream Theater, Tool, Voivod, Fate's Warning, King's X. But eventually what I did is I asked him, if you could only keep one prog metal album, which one would it be? And when I asked him that, it became very simple for him. Operation Mindcrime by Queensryche. And this works for me because the one and only song I know by Queensryche is Silent Lucidity. Plus, in general, there's prog in the name. I do like an awful lot of progressive music. And a lot of these guys say they get a ton of their inspiration from Rush, so this could be pretty great. And one quick little story, speaking of Queensryche. This is a road story that features Jeff Tate. Tate. No, not that Jeff Tate. Thrown away, though, it kind of is. I was touring with Butch Trucks and the Freight Train Band, and we were loading in to play a show at Capone's in Johnson City, Tennessee, only about half an hour from my in-laws' place in Bristol. As I was hauling my gear in, I saw a poster advertising that Jeff Tate would be playing there 3 weeks later. Tate. Right. That's exactly what I thought. See, not knowing Queensryche at all, I 100% thought that the comedian Jeff Tate, frequent guest on Doug Benson's podcast Doug Loves Movies, would be playing at Capone's. Honestly, the one thing that I thought looking at the poster was, I never would have guessed that Jeff Tate looks like that.
I'm not a smart man.
Maybe not. But there is one thing I have learned in preparation for this week. Apparently, Operation Mindcrime is supposed to be one of the best concept albums of all time. Prog rock opera? Could be. And this is actually good information for me to know ahead of time, because what it means for me is I have more reading to do than normal for this week. Since a good portion of what I'm about to hear will depend not just on the songs, but also on following a cohesive story. Again, this works for me. I do like a good concept album. Very well then, let's do some crime.
Operation Mindcrime. This is a second take. First one, audio got corrupted, went missing, so round two. I think this album was really, really endearing. There was a really good story. You know, it's widely considered one of the best concept albums of all time. You know, they had this really gritty story, but with this delivery that was just so aggressively like 80s hair metal, glam rock, and with this like deeper kind of concept feel behind it was something that I found to be really cool.
Rush influence. Definitely Rush influence. That's what I hear first. After that, though, the next thing I get is the overall sounds, the production quality used for this album. The sound of this album is very much of its time. Operation Mindcrime came out in 1988, the same year as like Vivid by Living Colour, Danzig's first album, Ozzy's No Rest for the Wicked, and that bright, sharp post-synth pop sounds of that era, the newly digital era. Those sounds are in full effect here. You do get a lot of that low-end whomp sound on the palm muted guitar bits. There's gated reverb on the snare. There's a bright kind of cutting attack on the bass. It's a very late 80s sounding album. But this is by no means a complaint. It may place it in time, but it doesn't detract at all from what I'm hearing. For the most part, the songs are engaging and harmonically interesting. As I'm listening to this the first time, the main harmonic device I'm hearing is that of suspension. That is, much of the musical tension in the songs on Operation Mindcrime. That tension is created by establishing a tone center. Then, after immediately stating the key's primary chord voicing, suspend the chord by raising or lowering one tone. And it's not always the third. Where I think this particular device works best is in the song Breaking the Silence, where even the main melody in the chorus starts on a minor 6 interval if you include the harmonies, after opening with the tonic and the third, implying that minor 4th chord without ever playing the chord explicitly. And let's talk for a minute about Jeff Tate's voice. Tate. His range is silly. I sat down with my guitar to try and find the highest note he sings full voice, and at one point I heard him get up to an E5. That's an octave and an additional major third above middle C. Really, the only problem I have is a hang-up I've always had about operatically trained singers. That is, the range of their vibrato can be so extreme that it masks the note they're trying to sing. So instead of just singing, the range of their vibrato was such that it can go across all 3 of those notes, and so where you're trying to hear this, you're hearing this instead. Like I say, it's a hang-up I have. It doesn't detract one bit from Jeff Tate's performance. Tate.
If you can imagine, like Guns N' Roses, a little bit of Coheed and Cambria, that's what it sounds like. I'm sure you can picture exactly what I'm talking about. The delivery was very, for lack of a better word, campy, but I mean that only as a term of endearment and not as kind of a derogatory term.
Look, final verdict, the album's great. But just saying the album's great doesn't give you really any insight into what I experienced this week as I was listening to this album. So what I'm going to try and do to help you get into my mind as I was listening to this work is walk you through the plot and recount to you what was happening, and along the way you'll get some insight as to how my brain works as I'm processing Operation Mindcrime. So we start off in a hospital where our main character, Nicky, is getting pumped with drugs to help him to some kind of clarity. Like comfortably numb from the wall. Right. So after he comes to a little bit, he remembers how it all started. He was kind of an outcast until he was found by a cult leader who helped him get his life back in order. Like Token of My Extreme from Joe's Garage. Yeah, I guess. Anyway, this cult leader, L. Ron Hoover? No. Quentin Robert D. Nameland? No, it's Dr. X. Great name. Anyway, Dr. X ropes Nicky into helping him reshape the world. He uses drugs to brainwash Nicky, turning him into an assassin to kill off specific political and religious leaders. Nicky's drug connection is a priest named Father William and a nun named Sister Mary. So I'm guessing Sister Mary was a Catholic girl. Technically, yes, but she did used to be a prostitute. Well, right, exactly. Don't make a fuss, just get on the bus. Okay, sure, but this is a lot more bleak and heavy than Joe's Garage. More bleak than a world where music is illegal? You have a point there. Moving on. Nicky begins to see himself as a kind of messiah figure. He sees that his cult is changing the world for the better. Like Sensation from Tommy. Yeah, but with dead politicians instead of pinball. Anyway, Dr. X has a mission for Nicky, but Nicky is feeling numb and isolated from the world. Like, is there anybody out there from the wall? Now that's a stretch. Is it though? Okay. Okay, fine. The changes are similar, but it's more than just I talk to shadows from a lonely candle, recite the phrases from the wall. Wow. Okay, so it turns out his next mission is to kill Father William and Sister Mary. He's got no problem offing Father William, but when it comes to Sister Mary, he can't. And there's an epic 10-minute song detailing the whole thing. Nicky comes down off of his drugs for just a minute, long enough to realize that the cult he's in is bad after all, and he tries to get Mary to leave. But she ends up dead too. And Nicky has a real problem trying to figure out whether he's killed her or not, since, brainwashed and all. Then after a cool little instrumental called Room 22, which when I was a teenager, I totally would have woodshedded and learned verbatim, Nicky is arrested and sentenced to a mental health facility. Yeah, where he finally misses Mary by wondering, who will clean my room? Who will fix my meals? Like Mother from the Wall. Ah. Then in the last song, Eyes of the Stranger, we come full circle to the hospital where Nicky was at the beginning of the album. Wow. Sounds like Queensryche copy-pasted one hell of a concept album. Come on now, that's not entirely fair. It's a cool album. It's a cool trip with some really first-rate performances. Like Joe's Garage.
That's pretty much all I have to say. Hard Not to Love. Please listen to it if you haven't already.